Hi, my name is Karen, and this YouTube channel is Straightway Mental Health Ministry. I make Christ-centered videos on autism, mental health, addiction issues. I am an autistic person with mental health issues and food addiction issues, and I at one time had nicotine addiction issues. I was not going to make another video today, but I felt like I was really led to make a video on the mental illness of schizophrenia. So what I want to talk about is what schizophrenia is, what schizophrenia is not, what causes it, how it's treated, and how people that are Christians in the church can support somebody that has a diagnosis of schizophrenia. So, before somebody can have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, they are diagnosed with schizophreniform disorder, and I'm going to talk also in this video about some of the related disorders to schizophrenia. But a schizophreniform disorder is the diagnosis for the first 6 months before the person can have the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia has symptoms that are known as positive and negative symptoms, and I will explain that. Um, it has been caused by genetics. Not everybody who has the gene for schizophrenia develops schizophrenia, but when there's a crisis or traumatic event, it can trigger the gene to cause schizophrenia. And one example is that I knew somebody that when her son, who was a toddler, fell down the stairs, that's when she developed her schizophrenia because it was a traumatic event for her. And so most people that have schizophrenia have a genetic predisposition for it, but there's a increasing number of people that have schizophrenia because of drug use, especially cocaine addiction. Cocaine can enlarge the chambers in your brain, and it can cause holes in your brain, and therefore people that have abused drugs, particularly cocaine, will get diagnosis of schizophrenia that is not caused by genes and genetics. People with the genetic type of schizophrenia usually are very intelligent people. They have a very high IQ, and the people who get it from cocaine, I mean, they might have a high IQ, they might not, but it's not a factor that is common among people that have it because of cocaine use. So, positive symptoms of schizophrenia are things that they're not something that's good. When they say positive symptom, it means that it's something that is there that should not be there. And the negative symptoms are things that are not there that should be there. The positive symptoms are things like hallucinations, delusions, strange behaviors. I will mention that the DSM-5, which they did come out with a new DSM in, I think, May, which is the DSM-5 TR, but when you look at websites, most of them are still using the DSM-5, which came out, I think, around 2010. The DSM-5, however, did recognize that There are people that have had supernatural spiritual experiences that are not a delusion or hallucination. The people may have sensitivity to spirits or have supernatural experiences in a church. Usually, with the Bible, it forbids contact, the living from contacting the dead. There is one instance in the Bible where Samuel was brought up and he had passed, but it's the only occasion in the Bible where God had allowed the dead and the living to have a conversation together. I know that there are experiences people have had. There's a movie, The Cokeville Miracle, that was based on a true story where an elementary school was held hostage, and the children and that were there, they all saw both angels and people from their families who had passed away, and many of the people saw relatives, the children saw relatives that died before they were born. And it's something that all the children that lived through that incident saw. And none of the children were killed. Only the two perpetrators were killed in that experience. It's a really good movie. Uh, but there's also the person, when they're dying, they often see uh, relatives of theirs that had died before them, and that's a spiritual experience. I don't know what causes it. I don't understand it, but it's something that is happens when somebody is dying. The positive symptoms could be hallucinations. There are most hallucinations that people with schizophrenia have are auditory, and these are sometimes command hallucinations that would tell them to do something that really isn't wise to do. And then there are visual hallucinations, people with schizophrenia that hallucinate visually, usually see things that they're three-dimensional, they look very real, they're in color, another interesting thing is people with schizophrenia that see demons is that every single one of them has a different description of what they look like. There are no two that coincide. They have sometimes olfactory hallucinations where they smell things that are not there, or they have tactile. The most common tactile hallucination, which is feeling things that aren't there, is they will say that they feel bugs crawling all over them, and that's a tactile hallucination that's common. Delusions, there's paranoid delusions and delusions of grandeur. Paranoid delusions are unusual a lot of times, and delusions of grandeur, they sound really strange, but they are extremely real to the person who has schizophrenia. All of the examples here come from different people who have schizophrenia. One of them is about a retired judge here in Blair County, and I mention his name. I don't think he's even alive anymore. Judge Peoples, and of course this isn't true. The person says that Judge Peoples has an electric chair in his basement, and he is executing all the male members of my family, and that is extremely scary to the person that said it. You and I might look at that and say that it's bizarre, it's strange, it's funny even, but it's not funny for the person who believes that. Another person was in the psych ward, and they passed out snacks, and she claimed that the person, the mental health worker that passed out snacks, had given her a carton of milk that he urinated in, which of course wasn't true. One person who has schizophrenia was in the hospital, in a medical situation where she was given a shot, and she claimed that the nurse injected her with the HIV virus and was laughing. And of course, that was not at all true. Then there are delusions of grandeur, grandiose delusions, where one particular person said that he went to church and all of the people began to pray to him because he was God, and of course that's delusional. Another person I knew in the hospital believed that he was the King of England. I've met people that believe that they're the governor of Pennsylvania who are not, and I have met somebody who thought he was Jesus. When people think these things, they usually believe that they are somebody that they admired before they had the delusion, and for that reason, a lot of people, who develop the delusion that there's someone else will think that they are Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary. And I have met somebody who thought he was Jesus, and I met somebody who thought he was Elvis Presley, and so those are just things that I had encountered. The negative symptoms of schizophrenia are also the impaired relationships, that the social skills aren't there, and the disheveled, appearance. The person may not be able to pick out clothes that fit them properly or match, or may suffer from poor hygiene because they don't have the uh, ability to recognize that they need to do things like shower and wash their face. Uh, Schizophrenia is usually uh, treated with medication. There are antipsychotic medications. People who take an antipsychotic medication may or may not have schizophrenia because they are used sometimes for other disorders, but the classical antipsychotics and second generation antipsychotics. And this is not an extensive list. Some of the classical antipsychotics are things like Haldol, Stelazine, Thorazine, Mellaril, and these medications have the most severe side effects. The second generation antipsychotics are Risperdal, Abilify, Seroquel, Geodone, Clozaril, Invega. All of these, they usually have less side effects, and the newer the medication is, the less likely Medicaid is to want to pay for it unless it's medically necessary for them to take the more expensive medications. There are a lot of ads on television for prescription medications where when a person is on Medicaid, the medications that are advertised on television are usually not covered by Medicaid because the patent has not expired. There is no generic form of it, and it costs more money. What do people who have schizophrenia need from each other and from other people in the church is they need understanding and compassion, because it's a disorder that is not really understood by a lot of people because most people don't know what it's like to be delusional. Uh, they need a relationship with the Lord like every person has, and they need people to understand that they are not possessed. Uh, there's a lady by the name of Ida Mae Hammond that came out with this revelation that people with schizophrenia suffer from a spirit of a double-mindedness. This is taken from the false idea that is not true, that schizophrenia and split personality disorder are the same thing. The definition of double-mindedness is people that are Christians who want to walk after the flesh and walk in the spirit at the same time. They want to please God, and yet there is a fleshly desire to sin and a war that goes on within themselves. So whenever you hear that schizophrenia is the spirit of double-mindedness, that really is a false idea. Uh, a lot of times people are in the psychiatric ward and they do not get the same compassion that somebody gets in the medical ward. And nobody, people don't come to visit that for some people, and yeah, that can be an issue. The visiting rules are usually very strict. A lot of things have changed in how a behavioral health unit acts and what is allowed on it that in the years that I have started appearing in them. Whenever I first started appearing in adult psychiatric hospitals, they had cigarette lighters built right into the walls, and you could smoke on the unit. And there was a lot more stuff that was allowed in the hospital that uh, is not allowed anymore because of people hurting themselves with things and because of them using things as a weapon. And a lot of it is because of people sneaking alcohol and cigarettes and drugs into the hospital, which is not very good, because the people there are trying to recover, or supposed to be trying to recover, and giving them addictive substances is not going to help them recover. Some of the side effects of the antipsychotic drug is drowsiness, weight gain, increased appetite. People on antipsychotics may sleep more than they're awake, and so they're sleeping more, and they have an increased appetite, so they're eating more. The metabolism is slowed down, and so there's a lot of weight gain. There's restless leg syndrome, which is terrible. It's something that I refuse to take any medication that causes restless leg syndrome. There's memory problems, especially with the older classical antipsychotics, that the person is just on the older antipsychotics. It's like your brain is numb. You can't feel, your emotions are blank, and it's not a very good way to live. It's not a very high quality of life to be on those medications. There's drooling, tardive dyskinesia. Tardive dyskinesia is involuntary muscle movements, and so the people have to take a side effect medicine for the medication. Is dry mouth is a big symptom. People who have dry mouth because of antipsychotics may have bad breath, and antipsychotics, because they cause dry mouth, it causes people's teeth to rot. Yeah, and so they might have a lot of fillings, and it's just one of the unfortunate side effects. There's sensitivity to sunlight. You may get sunburnt easily. Your eyes may be sensitive to sunlight. Sore, stiff muscles. A person, especially on the classical antipsychotics, may walk in a way that seems strange, may move their body in a way that seems strange because of the medication. Some medications will cause women to lactate. They will cause a woman not to have a period. They will cause quite often erectile dysfunction in men, and other side effects are constipation, sometimes liver damage. Uh, Getting back to what people with schizophrenia need from other people, Christians, is they need understanding. They might not be able to work. They might not be able to drive a car. And so, a lot of times anyone with a mental health disorder gets unfairly judged that because they're seen as being lazy and living off the system and working the system, and that's not the case at all. The person might live in a home, and whenever they live in a home, they may not have much money because the home gets over $1,000 to take care of them, which they do not take care of them, and then uh, they get $85, but if they have an institutionalized payee, the payee takes 45, which leaves like about $40, and then there's all of the medication and medical co-payments, and so a person living in a personal care home, a group home, may not have 10% of their income left over to give as a tithe, and they may not give much in the offering. Somebody with who lives in a personal care home or group home may not be able to prepare a covered dish for covered dish dinner. They might have to bring something that's already made. Sometimes they may just have to bring themselves because they just don't have the money to go out and purchase something. Getting into some of the other related disorders, schizoaffective disorder is schizophrenia, and it's a double whammy because they also have a mood disorder. They might have a depressive disorder where there's schizophrenia and depression, or they might have a bipolar, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type, where they experience the schizophrenia and the depression and the mania that a person with bipolar experiences, and I will touch on that later on. Schizotypical personality disorder and schizoid personality disorder are two personality disorders that are similar in some ways to schizophrenia. Schizotypical personality disorder is characterized by bizarre, unusual beliefs, and there are sometimes with schizotypical or schizotypical some hallucinations, and then there's a schizoid personality disorder. A person that has schizoid personality disorder is a hermit. They may live in isolation. They do not desire close human relationships. Uh, not everybody who has hallucinations also has, schizophrenia. They might have a instance where there are some victims of incest that survived it that will see monsters in the hallway as a way of coping and blocking what actually happened. And then there's people who have hallucinations due to other mental health disorders like PTSD sometimes. And so that's what I have to share now about schizophrenia. And I hope that it makes you aware of what it is and what it isn't, and how to be supportive of somebody that has this disorder.